Okay. We can call the Audit No Parks and Recreations Committee tonight, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Jenkins for Planning and Development Committee.
Mr. Mayor, I'll call the committee meeting of Planning and Development to order. And Ms. Beth? Sorry, Jesse.
That's right.
I mean, I just started this tonight. I mean,
know, it's tough.
I've only done this a little longer, you know.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. The first item on the Planning and Development Committee agenda is petition by M&T Real Estate LLC to annex Dorchester County TMS numbers 14506050006 and 14510020042, located at 227 and 229 Stallsville Loop and totaling approximately 1.10 acres. Currently zoned CG General Commercial in Dorchester County and will be zoned GB General Business upon annexation into the town of Summerville's municipal limits. This would be in Council District 3. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on February 28, 2022.
And if I understand, Jesse, that they're connecting that piece of property with another piece of property to build a medical.
Yes, sir.
The
They
intention.
plan to, to get rid of the property line between the two parcels and develop it as a medical office. They have submitted to the DRB because we do allow them to run concurrently. And so they will be going to DRB meeting in March for conceptual review of that medical office. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'll send this to council.
Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous.
The next item on the agenda is the request to rezone TMS numbers 13000000021 and 022, 22100000008, 216 and 217, 73000000021 and 022. Located off North Maple Street, Old Dairy Road, and Bear Island Road, approximately 48.83 acres and owned by Dustoff 22 LLC from AC Agricultural Conservation to GB General Business. These are in Council District 1. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on on February 28, 2022.
And if my memory serves me correctly on this, there have been conversations with the people in Weatherstone about their contiguousness to that and how things could be mitigated.
Yes, sir. We had a number of residents from Weatherstone that attended the Planning Commission meeting and requested, they requested transparency in the process, which we explained to them that the DRB process is open to the public once they get to that point. And they did want to make sure that a buffer would be required, which we did let them know that that would be required as well. They did, have complaints about noise and that sort of thing. And we told them that, they could work with the developer and or DRB to try and mitigate those impacts.
Thank you. Do we have a motion or questions?
I'll make a motion to send this to council.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Ms. Schuler?
The next item is proposed amendments to the Summerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 2, Section 2.5, Mixed Use District Standards, and Section 2.7, Conventional District Standards. Planning Commission public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on February 28, 2022.
Do you want to give a little bit greater explanation on that?
Sure. The change to section 2.5 is regarding the impervious surface particularly for NR for townhomes. It's currently set at 50%. And we've realized that it's very difficult to meet the 50% for townhomes. And so what we are proposing to do is add a note that says that the 50% will be for townhomes will be for the entire development, assuming there's a stormwater permit associated with it, if which there typically would be unless it was very small. And so that way it'll allow townhomes without requiring a variance for impervious surface for basically everyone if we did make this change. And section 2.7 so is in regards to townhomes. We noticed that in it came up initially in the multifamily residential district, but we also noticed in the mobile home residential, the neighborhood business and the general business. All 4 of those districts allow townhomes as a permitted use. However, all 4 of them have a minimum lot width of 50 feet. As we know, a townhome lot is not 50 feet wide. So while they're allowed as a permitted use, they're essentially not allowed with that minimum lot width. So what we're doing there is instead of changing that minimum lot width, we're again adding a note for those that states that for townhomes, the minimum lot width is 15 feet, which is what we have for townhomes in other districts.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah, just to understand you fully. So in the townhomes in 2.5, we're basically still requiring 50%, but we're allowing them to use part of that property.
So instead of calculating the 50% on a per lot basis, an individual lot basis, we're calculating it as a whole for the whole development.
Any further questions?
Make a motion that we forward this with a recommendation of approval to council.
All in favor? Aye. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
And the last item on the agenda is approval of the site plan for the changes to the Summerville CPW sewer treatment plant. Again, this is the only reason this is coming before y'all is its own PL public lands. And because of that, we have no setbacks or impervious surface. So it's all at the discretion of council.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion, we forward a recommendation for approval to full council.
All in favor? Aye. None opposed. Passes unanimously. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Public Works, Public Safety, no committee meeting for tonight. So I'll turn it over to Russ Kimmer for Public Works.
Okay, we'll open up our Committee on Public Works and Committee on Water Safety, Water Supply. Discussion of Dorn's Way.
Yes, ma'am. This item was brought before Parks and Recreation Committee last month. There's really no comments or response to this item. But before, if council chooses to move forward with this idea of adjoining Shepherd's Park and the new pond area, one item we would need to do early on in the process is take over Dorn's Way from the DOT into the town's street system. So staff is looking for some feedback on whether there's interest in moving forward with this project or not.
Okay, now I don't see Dorn's Way on here. Where is
So
that located?
the next item. Next slide, Beth, please.
Oh, so it's a street right
It's
now?
right through the middle. Yeah, we're Simmons Avenue on the bottom where that parking lot is. That's basically Dorn's Way, intersection Parkway Drive. So the idea is to combine Shepherd's Park and the new pond on Parkwood and Shepherd as one a larger park, basically, and removing Dorn's Way and making it more walker friendly. Pedestrian friendly.
Is there any discussion?
Has this been sent out to the public outside of our meetings here?
Just a very small few. I know Amy has polled the public safety departments and our traffic engineer, and they don't have any issues with it, any opposition to it. I think some people have been polled in the local area, but what I understand, it's been a positive response.
The only other question I would have is the anticipated cost for these improvements.
This is a very conceptual. It's just there's no budget been put together yet. It's just we want to get if there's interest in moving forward or not.
Kim, if I may speak.
Yes, go ahead.
Um, for me, I think it's a good thing. I know some people there and was just at a birthday party with a lot of the neighbors on Simmons Avenue. And, none of them had any problem with it. As a matter of fact, one of them said the only reason Dorn's Way is there is because the Dorns used to live at the end of it. And they're not there anymore. I know Amy has talked to somebody that's one of the HOA representatives, and they forwarded that information to their subdivision, and we have heard nothing negative back. And as far as a conceptual idea, right now, if we just take the road, I don't see a cost. We can let it sit there, we can grind it up. We don't have to do anything. We're not voting on the park, just the road. So I see to go ahead and put that in motion would open us up. And I think having the two sections together would allow the neighborhoods a lot more use of it and not worrying about their kids running across that road and somebody flying down Simmons and taking them out.
If I might, Kim,
Yes.
I actually agree with everything Bob just said. I guess I have two minor, I think minor concern. One is the upkeep of the park once it's completed. You know, what are we adding to the staff that we have and the ability to do that without having to add staff? We've got a lot of parks. and I think this is a great one. The other concern I would have is I happen to ride this area on a bike. And I know I'm crazy to be doing that, but if we move forward with closing Dorn's Way, when you go to Simmons Avenue, you've got two blind curves. You got one coming up the hill, you can't see anything. Got one coming around a curve, you can't see anything. I think we need to consider putting stops, four-way stop at Simmons and Parkwood. We've got one further down, but I think that's something that we need to do from a public safety perspective, since public safety apparently does not have any concerns with closing Dorn's Way. So other cost of maintenance and safety at Simmons and Parkwood, need plan.
Is that a consideration or is that a DOT?
They would have to approve that stop sign unless we just install it like we've done previously.
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe another alternative is if we redo the park, put something in that corner that takes that brush and stuff out so that you can actually see down in Parkwood.
Left and right, you're talking about?
Well, at least right, we'd have to talk to somebody about doing the left.
If you pull up to that, and I would suggest that anybody, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, pull up to that stop sign and tell me what you can see either way. If you stop at that stop sign,
I agree.
I get off my bike to walk out into the street because I can't see anything from the stop sign. I'm just concerned about the safety aspect, not the park.
So should we have a motion to send this to full council to consider taking Dorn's Way? This full council can discuss it on Thursday.
I'll go ahead and make that motion. Move that we take this discussion to full council on Thursday.
And I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Okay, discussion of the US 17A Gulf Road Spring Road intersection.
I'll let Councilman Touchberry take this one over.
Yes. The recommendations, well, did you want to get a presentation on this? When I talked to
Yes.
you, she.
Yeah, can you just go ahead and
Sure.
tell me what
I'll give you
your,
the feedback.
what your presentation was on it first?
So we got a complaint from the folks who live on Spring Road about the traffic speeds and cutting sharp, turning right on the Golf Road. So AJ looked at this and came up with this idea of basically creating a gore area, striping it, moving the stop bars out closer to the road, striping this triangle area and putting the raised delineators to make sure traffic stays in the lane and not cut right short. This was actually submitted and permitted by DOT and approved by the committee before. Councilman Bailey had second thoughts, so we held off, and now we're kind of pausing again and making sure that's what we're going to do or not do.
Okay, so this, the triangle striped, what would that prevent? It prevent the two side streets from people cutting over?
Yeah, there's a cross pattern hazard there, so people that coming, I guess, right on F-17A or south, or turning sharp and going through that go area. So if someone's at the stop sign on Spring, there's not been any collisions there, but I guess there's been close calls that I'm aware of. No collisions or crashes.
So first of all, I want to say, just from reviewing this, Mr. Cornett put together what I would call a very efficient way of solving the problem that was brought to him. I think it was a very good plan. However, the constituents that live on Spring Road and in the surrounding area, I had a meeting with them on site. There was 7 of them and 2 others drove by, and they were all very opposed to this. So we talked through several other options. The more permanent solution would be to turn Gulf Road into Main Street at a closer to a 90-degree angle, and that would require substantial cost as well as additional right-of-way purchased. But so at this time, that's not feasible for this. So in discussing with the folks who live in the area, they would prefer to do nothing at this time, even though they brought forth the complaint. From this plan standpoint, they asked for speed enforcement to be conducted along Main Street and Gulf Road in this area, and for the site distances to be verified. This is SCDOT right of way, so we would have to make a request that SCDOT verify the site distance. So if I were to make a motion based on feedback from the folks who had the complaint, I would say there's no sense in us spending our money or our time on this temporary solution. This is not the permanent solution. And we request Chief Wright to do some speed enforcement and have Mr. Cornett verify with DOT the site distance is correct at the triangles.
May I give a thought?
Yes.
Can we bring Gulf and Spring Road together at 90 degrees?
Well, again, it'd be a similar project. It would be right-of-way acquisition. It'd be very expensive.
Even in the middle between the two, or we're gonna put the whites?
You're talking about bringing Gulf Road into Spring Road.
Yeah, bring them in and just have you pull in.
It would still be a considerable project. Right-of-way acquisition, full plans, permitting. Not a quick solution or very expensive solution.
So there's nothing there in that triangle area. That's just all shrubbery.
Pavement. Paved.
I mean, right. And I would assume that most of that's owned by one owner.
And like I said, there's not been any crashes, a lot of crashes. They're really a problem. So,
If I might, Kim, I think what's interesting to me as I look at this is, I mean, I've gotten calls and Russ has done great due diligence on this, but I would add that 3 of the people that are opposed to it being done the way it is, which I think Russ is essentially saying makes sense. One is Walter Bailey, who's a former council member who lives there, but that doesn't give him any particular expertise. The other is Jim Woods, who's got 25 years on the highway patrol, mainly dealing with wrecks, and he's opposed to it. And the third is Elsie Knight, who is a sheriff for the last 12 or 13 years, whatever it is. And they just don't see this as something that is viable. So I think it's not just the neighborhood, it's the people that are familiar with public safety that are also involved. So just information for what it's worth.
Okay.
Would you like me to make a motion?
Yes.
Councilman McIntosh, did you have anything you wanted to add since you are here now?
I'm here to second your motion, Councilman.
Okay, we'll move to abandon or recommend to council to abandon this plan and request Chief Wright to have speed enforcement of Gulf Road and Main Street in this corridor, and ask Mr. Cornett to please verify with SCDOT that the site distance is accurate for those intersections.
I would second your motion, Mr. Touchberry.
Okay, we have a first and a second to go ahead and abandon this. All in favor? Aye. None opposed. Okay, our third item.
Third item is discussion of stop signs on Driver Avenue. We received a request from a resident in this area, Driver and 6 Iron, I believe, to implement three-way stops at 6 Iron and at 3 Wood. AJ, our traffic engineer, did some research here and looked at it pretty closely, got a speed traffic study, and it really doesn't warrant a 3-way stop sign. But in an effort to help slow traffic down a little bit through this curve, we're going to put up the signs you see, the intersection ahead signs on the approach to 6 Iron on either side, and also install reflective pavement markers along the center line to help with vision at night through that intersection. That's what staff recommends. That's what we're going to do. But if council, the committee would like to consider a stop sign, it's y'all's decision.
I just have a few questions. Obviously, this is in my district and I really didn't know anything about it. But when the agenda came out on Friday, I drove this Driver to Woodard and Woodard to Driver back 3 or 4 times. Are these signs not the signs that are already in place? These are additional signs.
These are proposed, right?
What's in place now as far as
I
signs?
don't think there's anything there. I haven't been out there in a while, but these signs are not in place now. The only sign there now is a stop sign at 6 Iron as you approach Driver.
As you approach Driver and 6 Iron, I'll make sure I'm in the right place. The next block over from 6 Iron, I can't see the street, but that's Woodard. isn't it?
Woodward,
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna argue with you, but I mean, I drove Driver from 3 Wood to Woodard and Woodard to 3 Wood, and the locations that you have marked, they're signs. They look like they've been put up in the last 3 or 4 months. So, I
those
mean,
types of signs.
you just kind of show curb ahead or something. But I don't see them on this picture. So I just didn't know what side, whether you're going to put another set of signs. We're going to replace the signs that are there, or so somebody approaching this intersection has 2 signs to look at. I'm just trying to figure it out.
We would probably replace them with what's the letter is there now. Put those out there. That's what the recommendation is.
When did you first get some sort of request or complaint from folks who live on Driver Avenue?
I got an email in January from a resident out there about this.
Is that the first time you'd ever heard about it?
She emailed me back in June of last year. Didn't see that one. She emailed me again in January, and we followed up on it.
You were familiar with the resolution passed by this council, I believe in April and May of last year, where if any constituent had requests or complaints, that they were to be immediately turned over to the mayor and the council member for that district, correct?
So the mayor's aware.
Was the mayor aware? Well, I'm not aware. Was the mayor aware back in June last year?
I think so. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Um,
Is there a stop sign right now at 6 Iron Lane?
there is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I've never seen a sign like this before. This is new to me. I mean, I don't understand if there's a stop sign at 6 Iron Lane, then why, unless we just have a curve sign,
6 iron stops, but driver, I mean, does not stop.
right?
And that's the request. The request is to make a three-way stop sign. So where driver comes to a stop, it comes to stop at, it doesn't. What is the stop sign at Woodard?
I think Woodward is a
Three-way.
three-way.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. No, it's not.
I think the issue is that it's on a curve and that when you approach
Maybe
6 iron from either direction at a high rate of speed, it's an issue. So I don't know whether given, if you made a three-way stop sign, you'd have to give people notice that a stop sign was coming. You'd still have to put signs at the T locations because you're not going to know that you're approaching a stop sign.
We would usually put a warning sign out of the stop sign effective on this date, several days or weeks before.
Well, I don't believe I was ever contacted by Public Works that this concern had been raised by my constituents. I mean, I think it's a direct violation of the resolution of this council. But if you say you conveyed it to the mayor, then I guess you got it halfway right.
Now you have, I see how you have like a little circle highlighted there at 6 Iron, and you have one at the intersection before that. Are you proposing that you put something there also?
Where are you talking about?
Well, I mean, on this, it looks like it's highlighted, doesn't it?
I think that's just the Google Maps.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
Graphics.
Well, not to complicate things more, but when this was on the agenda, I was contacted. I don't think it was a constituent, but a Summervillian requested that Niblick and driver be looked at as well for consideration of stop signs.
Is that road right there?
It's, I believe, one more over.
That may very well be in my district. It's either in my district or Councilman Brown's. Corey Woods is kind of divided up, but I do know that driver in Woodard and driver in 6 Iron is in District 4. But it just concerns me that constituent concerns aren't immediately communicated to council because we very clearly spoken on that issue. I think you referenced something about it not warranting a stop sign. I mean, I have concerns that a stop sign, if you don't give adequate notice, could instead of making it less dangerous, make it more dangerous. But what kind of criteria would you have to determine whether it was warranted?
Basically, well, we did a warrant study, and that's based on volume of the approaching intersection compared to the through road. And those volumes have to be close together. And this item, they weren't. Also, they considered speed, which freeway stops shouldn't be used as a traffic calming device, but they have been. But there was a part of the complaint was speeding. The speed study showed there wasn't really a speeding problem. 85th percentile was 25 on one approach, 27 miles per hour on the other approach, and marked 25 miles per hour. But to answer your question, the volumes on the intersecting approach and the through approaches have to be similar. And in this case, it's not.
I was just confused. I know that you and Mr. Nastapulo came before us just a couple months ago, asking for us to approve criteria for stop signs, and we specifically declined to do that.
Right. We're using MUTCD guidelines. That's the national standard we use. The warrant will still bring it before committee for their consideration.
Because I mean, I think what this council, I don't think it was just the committee. I think it was the full council. I could be wrong. It may have just been the committee. Was that the criteria that we passed down was our decision, not staff's.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, ask me a question.
Yes.
Russ, what's the speed limit on these roads?
25 miles per hour.
It's pretty slow, isn't it?
That's what all of our neighborhood streets require. Yes, sir.
But how many residents have requested?
Just one that I'm aware of.
I'm sorry.
Just one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think sometimes we react to, one of the things I've learned in the years I've been on council is when I get a complaint from one constituent, I take it seriously, but I don't take action on it until I get somebody else complaining about it. I think it's sort of a majority rule situation. And because of the growth of the town, there's always, we're having people all the time requesting more traffic calming, more stop signs, more four-way stops. And, but I think we have to sort of put it in perspective as to what the needs are for the community.
Is there any other discussion or,
Would you like a motion?
yes, our motion, yes.
I'll make a comment before I make a motion. It's important, I think, to, when you do those warrant studies, pay attention to the warrant studies for stop signs, because putting stop signs up increases the chance of having accidents. And with that, if you didn't follow a warrant study, you may have some theoretical liability. So for that, since it did not meet, I recommend that we take this to full council to approve the signs as shown after Mr. Cornett verifies what the existing sign inventory is on site. So there's nothing in conflict.
I'll second that motion.
There's been a motion made. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? All right. Thank you. Is there anything else? Committee discussion? Okay. All in favor? Oh,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, ready for the finance committee. Ms. Rhonda.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, you have the February 22 financial report in front of you. We're 8 months into our fiscal year. We collected, in February, we collected just under $5 million in revenue and spent 2.7 million. So we are still, our expenses are still our revenues. We do have a lot of revenue pools that actually will come in the next. Definitely this fiscal year structure, we're starting July through June. Our revenue is very heavily weighted in the last half of the year. I did look at a couple things. Second page. It's a detail of some of the revenues, property tax area. We're looking good on that. I think we may be a little bit short yet. I've done a little bit more analysis on that as far as the year goes. Licenses and permits, we're $10 million left to collect in that area. The business license renewals is a April-May cycle, so we should get most of that in that particular line item. The business license insurance, which I believe comes from the state, that usually comes late in the year too. May or June, I believe. That is, $8.5 million that we should get in those two categories. For some smaller items, I'm going to find bigger items. The Dorchester 2 reimbursement will come in June. One other item I do want to point out is the miscellaneous income that was budgeted for $900,000. I do not know what that number represents. So I don't bet we're gonna hit that target. Everything that I have looked at, researched, I really can't find a source for that unless it was sell real estate or something. So I anticipate you short in that particular area. Any questions about those items? Of course, the transfers in, we're taking income in from local hat each month. And I'll end up making some journal entries for some of the state accommodations tax. We're entitled to a portion of that, as with the ARP monies as well. Next slide is your impact fees. Year to date, we have collected net revenues of $163,000. So we're in that area. Hospitality tax and accommodations. It looks like we'll probably be a little bit over budget for our revenue line item for hospitality and accommodation, based on where we are presently. Total we collected 3.5 million. We budgeted just under 4 million. Stormwater, a lot of our revenue came in through tax collections. So year to date, we collected 2.3, spent 1.8, and we're just revenues over expenses just under 500,000. Particular questions? It's okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll ask Mr. Irwin to come up from Alden Jenkins. Present our 2020 audit.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Again, my name is David Irwin. I'm with Alden Jenkins. I was the partner who oversaw the 2020 audit of the town's financial statements, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here to discuss the results of the 2020 audit. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but the purpose of this evening's presentation is to provide you all an overview of our independent audit report, talk about the results of the compliance reports that we will issue in conjunction with the audit, discuss some information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate to you all, and just to also make sure you all don't have questions, and if so, to address those. But the financial statements, which I believe you all have received a copy of, they are the responsibility of management and members of the council. As your independent auditors, our responsibility is to issue opinion statements. We conduct our audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards and generally accepted auditing standards. And I'm happy to say that we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the 2020 audit. This is what you want. What this means, this is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as your external auditor. What this means is that in our opinion, the financial statements are materially stated, are properly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Some information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate to you all. Again, you all did receive a clean opinion. We had no difficulties in dealing with management. We had no disagreements with management. We had no uncorrected misstatements within your audit. And again, we are independent of the town as required by generally accepted auditing standards. You all also were required to have a single audit this year or in 2020. Again, a single audit is a compliance audit that is required when an entity has over $750,000 federal expenditures. We typically conduct a single audit in conjunction with the financial audit and issue those documents together. However, we went ahead and issued the financial statements in order to avoid further delays since we're so late issuing. That single audit has subsequently been completed. It's being reviewed as we speak this week. As was the case with the financial audit, we will be issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the single audit as well. As part of that single audit report, there's also a compliance report called the Yellow Book report that is issued in conjunction with a single audit. The Yellow Book report is a report on the town's internal controls and your compliance with various laws and regulations. We do have two audit findings to report for the 2020 audit. And it really just relates to the financial closeout and the time of reconciliation of your bank accounts, which in a nutshell is really the the reason why the audit was delayed as much as it was. I will say this, I mean, these findings are really of no reflection of your staff. It's more so the environment in which they inherited when they arrived. Needless to say that the 2020 audit, it came with its own unique set of challenges. Historically, we would start the 2020 audit in early April of 2021, and get it finalized and presented to you all in the May council meeting, May 2021. That's how it had been done in previous years. Needless to say, that did not happen this year. With the turnover that occurred within the finance department, again, that obviously did not happen. But I do want to thank Lisa and Rhonda for all their help in getting the information that we needed to get in order to get the audit finalized. Rhonda arrived at the town in August, September 2021. So, we were auditing a fiscal year that ended 6 to 7 months before she arrived. And as I'm sure she can attest, as a finance director, there's really nothing harder than to be responsible for an audit of a period in which you were not on staff. So that again, they did a really good job of getting us everything we needed to get the audit finalized. So when you factor in the pandemic and the numerous staff changes that have occurred, again, they really did a great job. So if I'm in your shoes, when you look at the findings, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I think these are essentially one-time issues that we will be will be corrected going forward. So I do not anticipate these findings in future years. As far as getting you all caught up, again, you all changed your year end to June 30. So therefore, this is the audit of the December 31st, 2020 financial statements. We will do a short 6-period audit for the period ended June 30, 2021. And talking to Rhonda, I hope now that this is finalized, we can go ahead and get started on that June 30, 2021 audit within the next couple of weeks. Our goal was to get that finalized and hopefully presented to you all by May. So you all will be caught up for the fiscal year, June 30, 2022 audit. So really wasn't going to go into the numbers of your financial statements unless you all had any specific questions. Again, these numbers are 15 months old. But again, just kind of wanted to meet with you all. Appreciate the opportunity and just kind of give you all an update of where we are on things, give you an overview of the 2020 audit and our plan going forward for the 2021 audit. So again, appreciate your staff, their hard work under, again, what was some unique and difficult circumstances. But we appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you all, and look forward to speaking with you all in a couple of months to get the June 30, 2021 audit done, and again, get you all caught up.
Thank you, sir. Mr. James.
I'm afraid I don't talk like an accountant, so you'll have to.
Good.
For those, most folks, everybody knows me, Gene Brislin. I am the chairman of the Bike, Cycle, and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And so we have a good group of people, volunteers like myself, that have been meeting. AJ has been our kind of conduit through the folks and has done a great job. But we wanted to kind of update you in picking up what the previous committee had done and what we're trying to do. And so we wanted to give you an update. Part of that has to do with financing and funding. And so therefore, I thought this would be a good place to make that presentation. We are working in a couple areas. One is a master plan. There was a master plan done in 2010. It was done by a young lady who was working on her master's degree in urban planning at Clemson. And she did a good job because it's about 300 pages. But if you look at it, the first 3 pages are the vision and what she talked about. The rest of it was sustaining data that I assume she had to put in there to satisfy the professor, which was okay. But it's a great document. It's just pretty thorough in terms of a lot of justification for, I think, things that are kind of common sense. So we decided as a volunteer group that, hey, we're not going to write another 300 pages. We just took the first 3 pages and said, okay, let's kind of come up with a vision of where we think the town ought to go.
in terms of that and getting input from folks. You have that attached to the kind of letter I presented about what I was going to talk about. Also in there, in looking at the ordinance that we have for this particular committee, we're tasked with developing a priority list for us and the folks to do in terms of trying to figure out where to spend our money in terms of sidewalks and pedestrian travel in town. That list that they had developed before was pretty extensive. It had 29 items on it. It was pretty big. And we've worked out a few of those items, but in my kind of years of doing things, I've found that evolutionary is a little better than revolutionary. So rather than coming to you with 29 projects, I say, why don't we just kind of narrow this down, take some small steps here and try to make some progress. We have made some progress with Lee Streets coming, I hope, and Maple. So we've had some stuff. So the idea is to do a couple small projects and then keep adding to that list, Also, as part of that, I realized being a civil engineer, they're like, oh, holy cow, we need to know what we have and what we don't have, right? And so I decided in talking to our committee, we decided that we would try to develop some GIS data for Karen to have for the town. She has a little bit on the trails, but she has nothing on the sidewalks. And there's a pretty extensive list of sidewalks. Got a little map here. I didn't get in your flyer, but it's really not important. What we've decided, or what we are trying to do, is develop a layer for Karen to input that has all the sidewalks. Now, started with the SCDOT road layers. The problem with that is if you try to add sidewalks to that, some roads have sidewalks on one side, some sidewalks have sidewalks on two sides, and so you have kind of a difficult time massaging that database to do that. We looked at a couple other towns, Austin, Texas, and what we found in another town in Minnesota, that they, as opposed to trying to attach their sidewalks to the roadways, they developed separate databases for the sidewalks. So we decided that we were going to do that. And so I reached out to high school folks and kind of get some high school kids to do it. And then the other thing I thought of is us runner guys and bike guys have these little Garmin watches that have GPSs on them. So we're going to reach out to the running community and the biking community and get them to ride around and mark those roadways and then share their data with us. Which is what Karen kind of did with some students. She had them walk the trail and gather the data. So we're going to do the same thing, except involve more of the community to get that. So we're in the process of doing that. We've set up the database and we're in the process of trying to work out the gathering, put a grid over the town. So what we're going to do is divide up the town into grids and give folks a grid and go let them write a grid and give us the data back. So we're hoping maybe by the end of the year, we'll have that done. And so in this priority list, when we looked at it, when we took up this priority list, you said like, wow, how can we try to get this moving forward? And so the consensus among the committee was that we wanted to make a presentation to the council to ask to become a line item in the budget in terms of repair and fixing and expanding the trail and the sidewalk system. If you look at the vision plan that we had done a long time ago, it has a significant amount of things about pedestrian mobility, i.e. making the town more walkable. And we want to do that in baby steps. I don't know that we have to, again, be revolutionary and do everything at once, but we'd like to make a small continuous improvement every year. And so therefore we're asking, based on the budget, AJ was able to give me some numbers on the sidewalks that we have going in right now. And right now they're averaging about $150 per linear foot, total construction cost. And so the idea was that if we were to do about 2,000 to 3,000 feet a year in terms of maintenance or new construction, that would work out somewhere between 300 and 500,000. And so the idea is hopefully that we would include a line item in our budget for that, and then every year figure out where those projects would be. As some perspective, a typical block in downtown, one side is 525 feet. So if you were going to do 2,000, it's basically one block. So it's not a lot, it's a little bit, but the idea is if we keep doing that constantly, or year after year, we'll make some significant progress in terms of walkability and in terms of transportation. The trails, we were worried about the trails with the Berlin Myers construction.
right? So there was a big discussion, even SCDOT put that out because they were worried about closing the trails based on the flooding and the construction. They were going to have to do that. But we got some really good news from Kevin Turner, who's the SCDOT guy, that's going to be the project manager. He came to our committee and made a presentation. And basically, all the input that folks did when the SCDOT had that online thing, basically they realized that they can't close the trail. So he presented to us how they're going to work very hard to keep the trail open by putting alternate trails. The bridge down there going into Dolphin and States, I thought that was going to go away. That's not going to go away. So it was some very good news in the sense that the trail is going to remain open. Besides the expanded trail, we're going to get on the other end. And so in our list up here, we have a couple things. The things that we focused on are things that we think are right now really safety hazards. East 6th Street, there's a little piece of sidewalk. The sidewalk comes up from Gahagan and goes up, and then it stops. And then there's just one block there that needs to have sidewalk that gets you back up to 17A and back down to Azalea Park. There's a sidewalk there on Highway 17. So that's a small piece of sidewalk. West Carolina Avenue, right down from the Episcopal Church, there's a little piece of road there that has no sidewalk. And we do our runs at Fleet Feet on Saturday. We run down there, and I can tell you, I've run on that road several times down there close to that stop sign. There's no sidewalk there. It's really kind of dangerous. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, there's been some requests for crosswalks there and stuff. So there's been some recognition of the neighborhood that there's a safety issue there. So that's another one on our list. The sidewalk extension, that is right over here across the alley, the bulb out, and some work on the crosswalk there. We think it's important. It was on the priority list from previous, and we felt like it was in terms of, again, you'll look at these numbers, we tried to pick out the 5 or 6 projects that we thought would be within that budget line amount that I'm asking. We did 3 sidewalks, and then we did 2 trails. The one that's the flashing beacon down on East Richardson. So that's at the trailhead. There's a crosswalk there, but there's no lights or things. And so we'd like to see something like there is on Main Street. Again, the Fleet runners run down that street and run across that bridge all the time. I've done it 100 times. And so it'd be nice to have some flashing beacons. Most of the traffic there is pretty good. They see us coming and they stop. Whoever's going either way, whether it's bike riders but it'd be nice to have some flashing lights that people could hit just to make them feel a little better across there. And then the big thing was this trail extension, which before we knew what Kevin Turner had told us, the idea in our minds was that if we were going to lose that end of the trail, that we would try to compensate it. Because again, I'm on that trail 3 or 4 times a week and I see a lot of people on that trail. There's a couple who rides their bikes almost every morning from Harleyville. I see them, and there's another lady with a walking stick that has to be at least 85, and she just is really fit lady. She's on there all the time. So that trail is well used by the residents of Summerville. So in that there's a piece of property there at the trailhead that's owned by SCDOT, and I spoke to the mayor about this kind of idea of trying to compensate or trying to add something in. And so there was a discussion about whether we could get a trail like asphalt, but we take gravel, something up to Gahagan Park. So the idea is that you could come off the trail and go up to Gahagan, and then there's an asphalt pathway around Gahagan, and then you come back down to the trail. So you would add 2 miles maybe in terms of distance there. So bike riders or runners could run that, and it would work out pretty good. We still think that that's a good idea. We'd like to see that, so that's on our list. And then strategically, probably the biggest item, which is not on this list, but what we think is, in a 5-year, maybe even 10-year plan, is connecting the trailhead or Richardson up to the North Maple project, North Maple Street, because you can go from that trail up there, get on North Maple, and go all the way almost to Cane Bay, because they've got those trails all the way on that road. That would vastly extend our network just by, now that's a significant piece of a trail between those 2 spots. But if we did, it'd be like matching up 2 cities in terms of travel. So that's more long-term. But anyways, the committee folks have been doing a good job. They're all volunteers, and we've been riding around and looking at stuff and trying to make recommendations. But anyways, the big thing for us, or what I want to leave you with, is please consider trying to get us a line item in the budget so that Russ can build stuff and we can recommend stuff and we can make a little bit of improvement every year. Question?
I have one. Have you looked at the possibility of a bridge across the creek down by the YMCA so the trail can go to Dorchester Road and to the boat landing, because the county is planning on going from the boat landing and up Eagle Creek?
We have not. There used to be a bridge down, right?
No, not the Asheboro,
Okay.
going straight. And I mean, the trail is used from both ends. There is a stomp, pretty packed on trail from both ends. We just need a bridge across the creek.
Okay. Where, so not the Asheboro, the which way? The other way?
It would be done between the YMCA fields and
Yes.
Dorchester Road. Russ is real familiar with it, so is Amy.
Across Dorchester Road?
No, not just to get us to Dorchester Road, that little creek that comes out of Evergreen.
Yeah, well, there needs to be extend the path from the YMCA down to Dorchester Road. Yes, I agree with that.
And right now, we're not to the position because of the Berlin G, we can do a trail.
Right.
But if we did the bridge, there is a dirt trail that is very well used there already. People come from both ways. They just don't cross the creek.
Yes. Maybe so. Again, I run to the YMCA and back, so I'm having a hard time visualizing.
When you
but
go,
that's-
when you turn around at the YMCA.
Yeah.
Go another quarter mile.
Okay. Well, again, that would, anything we can do to extend the trail, again, I think that's all good stuff, right? So, because it's, like I said, very well used and it's very popular amongst the citizens. And so, yes.
I can guarantee you one thing, you won't miss it.
Yeah. All right. What else?
Thank you, Gene.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody
Thanks
else
for
got
your-
any questions for Gene? Gene, I think y'all doing a great job. And I feel like with our Parks and Playgrounds Committee, getting on board with y'all is nothing can stop us. I mean, we've had this committee since I was on council. And which that was back, I got elected in 2003. And we hadn't made any headway too much. I don't know that we've had a sidewalk plan. We just put them in when we decided to put them in. And I know there was a plan for continuous sidewalks in the old part of town. We hadn't been too successful with that. I feel like, Bob, with your committee, you could get with Gene and let's try to work with this, because this sounds like a great thing. And there's probably grants we can get. It's not probably, I know it's grants we can get and get started on this program and really go somewhere with it, because it's a great thing. We got to start with the trails we got now.
Yes.
And, you're just talking about going around and going all the way around town and then getting back to Nexton Parkway, going all the way to Cane Bay. That's huge.
Yes.
And I know it's a long way, but it's a short way to do this part you're talking here. And I just think it'd be a great thing, but I think with our Parks and Playgrounds, all we gotta do is find the money for Amy. You know Amy?
Yeah.
Well, all you gotta do is get with her.
Yeah.
And Bob can find the money because he seems to get it from the town somehow. And then we pass it over to Amy and she'll take it and it'll happen.
Yes.
But don't give up.
No, sir.
You know,
I mean,
you're
grant
doing-
wise, I talked to PJ, there's a federal highway administration grant program for schools.
Yeah.
Getting connectivity to schools. And so that money went away, but I'm hoping because of the new infrastructure funding bill that money will come back.
Yeah.
And so, we want to look at all the schools around the schools, wherever, and make sure we have like a 2-mile radius that has sidewalks where people in that district that attend that school have the option, like middle school kids. High school kids, a little tough, as Councilman Brown and I were talking about. Most of them have after school jobs or something, and so they're not really interested in maybe riding the bike to school and going back. But if you're in middle school, you don't have one, right? So you might be able to ride the bike to school and come back home.
Well, Aaron's forgotten how to ride a bike, but he walks every day. But
Yes.
so it gives him a little more path to walk on, but We all for it. I think it's a great thing.
Thank you.
Let me say
Thank
this, Russ probably remembers this, even though he's a young guy, we got a grant from the highway department in Brownsville, it must have been 10, 12 years ago, Russ. And they, for this, you just mentioned, you know, as far as they were trying to get some sidewalks around all through the school or whatever. But yeah, there's grant money out there and PJ is very good at that and Amy is too.
Yes.
And you know, I appreciate your presentation. You did a very good job. And, you know, we have a lot to think about on town council. Sometimes we don't get to think about all the things that you guys riding the bike does.
Yes.
And so you see things a little bit clearer maybe. And so hopefully we'll be able to work with you. Appreciate you guys. I know it's been a little struggle at times getting people to volunteer.
The folks we have are energetic and interested. You know, we have Sandy O'Keefe, right? My mind's slipping, right? Sandy has been very, she's working hard, you know, part of the ordinance as us promoting stuff. And so she's excited about trying to get a bicycle race here in town, which is, it sounds to me like a NASCAR race. They basically take about 3 blocks and they go around it like 30 times. But there's this particular race goes from town to town. They've done it in Walterville before. And so Sandy's interested in trying to get it here. So that may be something we come back and ask for some help from the chief in terms of traffic and stuff like that. But we're working on trying to do that, promoting, you know, fitness and well-being, and so people can get out.
Have you got all of your slots with the pedestrian committee filled now?
Yes, sir. We're full.
That's great.
We're like now we're in good shape.
Good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate it. All right, what's next, Lisa?
Benchmark report.
Huh?
The benchmark report, right here.
On the right page.
Yeah.
Everything taken over yet?
Right there.
Benchmark report. Benchmark report from SC revenue.
Well, I can open that up, I suppose, Mayor. I think council received a copy of the benchmark report. I think it was back in mid-February. We sent you another, we sent it to you again today, just so it would be fresh in your memory. But at this point, I think council is, or excuse me, staff is just looking for some direction from council as far as next steps. I know an option that we have or that council has is to ask RFA, the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, to come and make a formal presentation to council of the benchmark plan. Or we can, if you're satisfied with what you see in the benchmark plan, we can ask RFA to create a preliminary redistricting plan based on their recommended criteria. Or council can discuss its own criteria and send that information up to RFA.
I personally would like them to do it and us stay out of it. I was involved last time and it was a mess in trying to push this here and that there. I think them doing it keeps politics out of it. When it comes back to us, if we want to tweak something, we can do that. But I think the less personal the redistricting plan is, the better off we'll be.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I think that whoever draws our lines, and I don't think it has to be RFA. I mean, the League of Women Voters draws lines, the NAACP draws lines. There's no requirement to use the RFA, but whoever actually does the technical shifting of lines is going to be looking for some feedback from us before they start. What are our priorities? You know, is it a priority that the districts be as compact as possible? Is it a priority that the districts follow precinct lines as much as possible? Is it a priority that we maximize the possibility of a majority minority district? Because what this benchmark report makes clear is that we are nowhere close to having one of those presently. It's garbage in, garbage out. If we don't tell them what we want, they're not even going to know where to start. But it certainly doesn't have to be RFA. It can be anybody that we entrust to draw lines consistent with our priorities.
And I agree. And that was one of the big problems we had last time we did it, is trying to get a minority district. And we were to point up picking blocks here and there and still never achieved.
You won't get a minority
We did
district.
the best we could.
Well, how about let them bring us back something?
I agree.
Does that
Well-
satisfy you, Bill? And then we, I mean, they're so out of whack right now from what Lisa showed me today that I don't think there's any way we can sit down and try to balance them. I'm talking about population wise.
We would have, I mean, nobody sitting at this dais is going to be drawing lines. I think that's clear. I always call it the Budget Control Board, but RFA, they got a new acronym now. The gentleman that worked there for decades that we all knew and worked with was Bobby Bowers. Bobby's deceased now since the 2010 census drawings. I think he knew both formally and informally what we were looking for. My only point is I don't think we can just say, draw us some lines. We have to give them what's important to us and then have them, and in many instances, once they, whether it's RFA or League of Women Voters or whomever, once they know what our priorities are, what our emphasis areas are, they can provide a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and allow us to pick among them. But no, I agree with Bob. We don't, I don't have any interest in trying to sit at a computer screen and moving this district a block in this direction or in that direction.
And I think your idea of the fewest precincts per district is a good thing, other than the minority district. And I think that takes priority.
I think that council should have some input in it, because we've got 6 districts here in Summerville. And when you look at these numbers here, we can see that there's been a decrease over the last 10 years in the minority district that I serve, the Brownsville area, Germantown area. And also we're starting to build, on the Maple Street tract. So I think we need to make sure that if we want to keep Summerville as it is now, where we have representation across the board, I think we need to take a look at it and make sure that we give the people in Columbia something. We tweak it somewhat to make sure that we're going to have the kind of representation that we traditionally had in the past. When I think of Summerville, I think the people in Summerville wants that. When I look at the legislature for what they have done, they're pretty close, I think, to what we're thinking also. Because if you look at the guidelines that they talked about, they want to make sure that the districts have approximately 8,000 people in them. They want to make sure that there's a representation for a minority to win a seat. We know parts of the Voting Rights Act has been removed, but I think people of goodwill and in good conscience, and I applaud the legislature for what they've done. They're pretty close to what I see when I look at Summerville, when I look at the map of Summerville and the area that I serve. And so there seems to be encouraging us, when you read the information that we got from them, from the RFA, that they're trying to point us in the right direction. So I think we need to have some input. Now, there's 3 ways we can do it, as Lisa pointed out. We can decide how we want to do it, whether we want to do it ourselves or I do think we do need some professional help because they've got all the numbers and they're looking at the entire state. So, but I do think we need to, council needs to have some input.
If I could, I think what Mr. McIntosh said is if we are giving them some direction on what we're looking for as a council, and I look at this and not say my district, I'll just say District 2 is the one that's greatest out of whack.
Yeah.
In terms of people, the number of people, but also in how it's spread out. I would be looking for compactness of individual districts. That may not be possible in all 6 districts to achieve what we need to do. But I think trying to achieve that is what we absolutely want to try to do for, you know, in the last election, if I wanted to go to every polling place in my district, it was about a 2-hour ride. And I mean, that's in a, I don't care, 50,000 people town, that's ridiculous. You know, so I think that suggestion to let them know that what we're looking for is how do we consolidate districts best and achieve the objectives that they want is a starting point to give them.
And I agree. District 2 that Councilman Jenkins represents and the district that I represent, District 4, are the 2 districts that are going to have to lose population. They've had by far the most growth over the last 10 years. They both happen to be, you know, not particularly compact. On the other hand, District 1, represented by Councilman Brown, it needs to add people. It needs to add a significant number of people. No matter who draws the line, it's going to pick up on that. I mean, that's what this benchmark report tells us. It also tells us that a couple of districts, I think Councilwoman Gardner Smith's district is almost perfect as far as the number of people that are in it now. It grew at exactly the right rate. So, I mean, anybody can read that. A demographer, a statistician can read that and know, all right, you take from 2, you take from 4, you got to give to 1, maybe leave Councilwoman Gardner Smith's district alone as much as possible. But they're also going to be looking to see what we want. Lisa, will you tell us those 3 options again?
Well, before I do that, I did want to point out, if you look at your benchmark report on page 2, it does list if we were to ask RFA to go ahead and give us a preliminary plan for council to review. Those are the items they're going to consider. And it does basically, I think, refer to pretty much everything that you all have stated that they would follow.
Yeah, I think it might be good, you know, I'm just going to read this if you don't mind.
Sure.
Consideration for preliminary plan and developing preliminary plan, RFA recommends following constitutional and statutory provisions. The first one is the requirement of 1 person, 1 vote under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and accepted variances. The second one is the Voting Rights Act, primarily Section 2, which protects the interests of the racial minority population. And the other is other applicable court decisions in federal state law. And then further, RFA recommends the following set of traditional redistricting principles be considered. The first one is districts or wards be drawn continuously so that all parts of the district or wards are connected to each other. Districts or wards will be drawn to minimize the division of voting precincts. Districts or wards will be geographically compact to the extent practical, such that nearby areas of population are not bypassed for a more distant population. Dorchester County just dealt with that and had a tough time. The next one is district awards be drawn when feasible with respect to existing districts and communities of interest, which will require input from council and the citizens. And the last one recommendation is districts awards be drawn to comply with other applicable court decisions and federal state laws. When you look at Summerville, what's happened to us over the years is we have started to grow all of a sudden, and we've grown rapidly in the last 20 years. And inadvertently, the districts have changed. And like Terry just mentioned, in his district, it's like, you know, he's way out of whack. My district is way below with the number of people in my district. And we can talk about race or creed, but basically each district is supposed to have as much as practicable an even number of representation by that one council member, which is around 8,000, maybe a little over 8,000. So, and that's why the RFA is making these recommendations. They're thinking about the same things that we're starting to think about now, but they were thinking about it a little bit longer than we have. So, but they do, I think they're going to be more comfortable with the last final drawing of the district for Summerville if we have some input and make some recommendations to them.
What is the requirement for public hearings?
I mean, as far as notice,
As far as adopting lines, is there not a statutory requirement for public hearings?
there is, but I don't know off the top of my head. Do you?
I don't either,
Okay.
but I guess what I'm kind of getting at, I'm looking at number 3, the 3 options. You know, we've already essentially done option 2.
Mhm.
Option 1, it says council making its own redistricting and use RFA in a consulting role. Option 2 is RFA can create a benchmark report, criteria, and council can then draft its own plan. And then option 3, council may review the benchmark report created by RFA, then adopt a set of criteria and request the creation of a preliminary districting plan. So far, I guess we've done 1/3 of option 2. We have the benchmark report. The question is, what is the criteria going to be and who's going to adopt it? If we go with option 2, we need to adopt the criteria and then draw it. If we go with option 3, we adopt the criteria and request them to draft it, draw it. I think that we're at a stopping place for now until this council adopts specific criteria. And the reason I asked about, and by adopt, I mean take a vote. The reason I asked about the requirement for public hearings is if we're going to take a vote on what criteria is important in draft and drawing new lines, whether it's compactness, whether it's maximizing minority participation, I mean, whatever we decide, it seems like we ought to have the public hearing that's required anyway, have it before we adopt the criteria. It just seems like that would be the sequencing.
Councilman McIntosh, I think I'm tracking what you're looking for. We need to establish our priorities.
They call it criteria, but exactly.
Criteria.
Whether
Could we
our-
utilize the bullets listed in the recommendation as potential priorities and then rank them? Send those back to RFA to simplify the process?
I think we can do it however we want to do
Okay.
it. I think it would, I don't think it can happen today.
Oh, certainly not.
I think if in fact, and I may be misremembering, it's been 10 years, but I believe there's a public hearing requirement. And if we're required to have a public hearing, I think we should hear from the public before we officially adopt our priorities, or as these folks call it, criteria.
I do have a sample resolution that we can use, and it does have a list of criteria that pretty much follows what the recommended criteria is from RFA. But if you all would like to have a public hearing, would you want to do that at a committee meeting, a council meeting?
I think it has, I mean, the vote itself has to be at a council meeting, I guess. the full, because we're council and whole, a committee of the whole, we could have the public hearing as part of a finance committee meeting. I don't really see the connection to what the finance committee does, but, you know, we have, and don't get me wrong, there might be 2 people show up, there might be 5 minutes. We have plenty of public hearings that close almost as soon as they open. But it just seems to be going backwards if we adopt the criteria and then say, oh, here's our statutory required public hearing. We're going to check this box. We had a public hearing. Well, we've already voted.
Well, I think the public hearing is soothing for the public. They give them an opportunity to be present with something that's very important as far as, you know, depending where they live in the town and, you know, whether they're going to be participatory in their government. So I think the public hearing is something we should do.
And is this something that you would like RFA to be present to conduct?
I don't think so. I mean,
No?
I-
Okay.
I mean, it looks like we're obviously not going with option 1. We're not drawing the districts ourselves. But it looks like option 2 or 3, either one, and I'm comfortable with either. I do hear other people saying they're more comfortable with 3, but either one requires us to establish the criteria. So I don't see where RFA has done what we've asked them to do, and I think they're waiting to hear from us as to what our criteria is.
So I understand, we're having a public hearing for this redistricting. But to me, we need to give some level of criteria that they can comment on. And these recommendations may be great criteria for them to comment on, and they can communicate what is more of a priority for those recommendations. So, yeah.
Put it in the agenda.
Correct. So we could narrow it down and focus the public comment around the recommendations of this. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, I mean, I don't think any of us are talking about adopting criteria that's just completely out of left field. But if you put one criteria as an emphasis area, it is going to affect the others. In other words, if you put compactness as your number 1 criteria, it is going to have an impact on everything else. So including whether or not we are anywhere close to having a minority district. So I think it's helpful before we have a public hearing for the public to know what the balancing or competing criteria are, so they're not coming into a public hearing saying things that don't really address what we have to decide. But I don't think the decision should be made before the public hearing.
So what do we do? Have a public hearing on 2 or 3?
Just our criteria.
Huh?
Just on what our criteria will be, whether we do option 2 or 3, we have to establish our criteria.
Okay, so let's get this over with. So we're gonna have a public hearing at the next finance committee meeting on the criteria.
Can we name what the criteria are? Can we name that it's these items,
I mean, the
recommendations?
public's gotta come here and know what they're gonna vote on, what they're gonna talk about, right? The public's gotta come here and know what they're gonna be at this public hearing for.
Yeah, I think we just used the list they gave us and asked what they want for priorities, and we'll have to have 2 public hearings, one before.
Yeah. And then afterwards, we vote on it.
We vote on establishing the criteria, correct?
Right. You got that, Lisa?
Yes, sir. I
I'm
have
glad
that.
you do, because I don't.
Okay.
But anyway, okay, Bill, that suits you? We don't need to vote on that, do we?
I mean, we can call a public hearing without a vote, correct?
Do what?
We can call a public hearing without a vote. That is correct.
Okay, and we'll have the public hearing at the next meeting, finance committee meeting. then you know what to do.
Yes, sir, I've got it.
Okay, let's move on to the next thing. All right, the next thing we're voting on is the people that are going to handle the repairs on the weatherization program for the LMI communities. Y'all know what that is, right? We talked about habitat.
Actually, Michael Lyle's got a presentation.
Okay, Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Back in January, you all appropriated $225,000 for a home improvement and weatherization program targeting our low and moderate income community. Since that time, we have received proposals from 3 different nonprofit organizations to provide administration of those funds and oversight of the work. Those organizations are Habitat for Humanity of Dorchester County, Homeworks of America, and Operation Home. We had a group of 3 employees serve as a review panel for those proposals. What you have in your packet is a kind of a 1-page synopsis of what that review showed in terms of average scoring and strengths and weaknesses of the relative proposals. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have regarding the process or what the next steps are. Yes, sir.
I have a comment. I knew you mentioned the 3 organizations you're looking at.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of that.
You mentioned the 3 organizations that you're getting an opportunity to act as a filter for the applicants, right?
Yes, sir.
I've got a
Dorchester.
problem with Operation Home.
Okay.
And I've been on council a long time, and for over 15 years or so, I've tried to get them to help people that were low and moderate income and with housing repair and all that stuff. And I can't remember one person getting qualified through that organization. And I just think that I can't figure it out. I've never dealt with a nonprofit that was dedicated to helping somebody in particular area and nobody gets helped.
I can't speak for them. I know they indicated in their proposal that they had worked with a number of clients in Dorchester County and the town of Summerville. But we did not ask them to
Well,
provide
they must
specific
live in,
client references.
they must live in Lincolnville. They have not helped anybody. I'm in my 21st year on council. And, you know, I just think that they need to be scrutinized because I just don't think they're done. I've turned to the churches and gotten help and many other organizations, but that organization has never done anything to help people that I've sent to them. And some of the people that I sent to them and recommended to them were people who were destitute as far as economics, and they needed help and they didn't get help. And so as one of the reasons, you know, that I'm asking about the application, we don't want a process where people can't get through the filter. The filter is so thick they can't get through and they can't get help.
Right.
So that's you know, that's what I'm concerned about.
We've been very clear with all of the applicants what the eligibility criteria are that have been established under the American Rescue Plan Act, and they have all affirmed that they will honor those criteria, even though for probably all 3 of them, the income level that is considered low and moderate income under the American Rescue Plan Act is higher than what their traditional threshold would be for income. They've all committed to honor.
Federal guidelines.
The American Rescue Plan Act, the final rule indicated that we could go as far as 300% of federal poverty guidelines for family size and location. And they've each indicated in their applications that they would commit to honoring that guideline, even though that is higher than what they would typically allow.
And I hate to bring this up, but I just thought I had to put that in there. I just.
Guess you can call for any other comments or questions. I guess you can call for any other questions, Mayor.
Yeah, any other questions for Michael?
You expect to start, you're going to have a meeting for people to come in who are probable applicants.
We have not figured out how we would roll that out other than once we've gotten direction from council on the entity that we're to work with for administering the program. Our initial connection will be with them to assess how we bring people into the program.
So you figure that you'll be ready to start taking applications in a week, 2 weeks, something like that?
I would think probably within 2 weeks, certainly, as long as we get direction from council tonight as to which
All
way
right.
to go.
All right, thanks.
Michael, you're not recommending one of these organizations, you're gonna use all three of them?
No, sir, we are asking council for direction. What we did is evaluate the proposals. We have a clear high score, a clear middle score, and a clear low score. But we were not authorized to make a decision and begin negotiation with the top scoring provider. We're looking for direction from council as to,
You're actually looking for us to let you know which one of these organizations to use.
yes, sir. I mean, our recommendation as a review panel would be, we had a clear high score and there was a pretty substantive difference between number one and number two. It wasn't particularly close.
No, I'm sorry, who was number one?
Operation Home.
Is the number one you don't?
They're number one.
They were our highest scoring application.
I mean, well, somebody needs to be looking out for the poor folks. Okay.
Ms. Brown, I told you what I know, which is that they have indicated they provide services in Dorchester County and the town of Summerville. If that's incorrect, that's news.
I
to me.
mean, I'm not picking on you. I just know the reputation of this group. They just not done the job.
Excuse me, Mayor. Could I make a motion that we vote on this on Thursday? And let Aaron and Michael kind of discuss so that we can get some clear understanding of where this misunderstanding may live.
I'll second.
Motion made that we put this off till Thursday. Let Mr. Brown and Michael get together and talk about this situation. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I do have a question if I'm reading this right. Are you saying Operation Home has no cost involved in it? Everything goes to repair?
That's correct. Their application indicated that they would not charge any administrative cost to this grant.
And if I'm reading this correctly, Habitat is over 25% of the program, the other was about 20.
Well, Habitat indicated an administrative cost of about $62,000 per year. Homeworks of America indicated an administrative cost that would be capped at $21,000 per year.
Anything else, Terry?
Yeah, I'm not understanding everything I'm reading, so I'm agreeing with the further discussion is needed.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise, ayes carry. Okay, you all get together and discuss it, and I might want to get in on some of that discussion with you, Aaron. That sounds good. Okay, Lisa, go to the next thing.
Okay.
One, two.
Next is authorization to spend $4,500 from hospitality tax toward a memorial honoring Medal of Honor recipient Chris Seelas. I'm not sure if Councilman McIntosh or Jackson, if you would like to speak on this.
Yes. This memorial sadly is for a man that grew up in Summerville and in December received the Congressional Medal of Honor. He was in a position where they were overrun and a non-American, somebody from that country who was on his team, got wounded and they called in a helicopter. As they were trying to load the guy on, whoever it was came in closer and he actually stood in front of the helicopter and blocked the bullets from hitting the cockpit while they loaded him. And as they got him loaded, he got hit and he told the pilot to leave, saving the crew of the helicopter. Bill and Amy have been working with me to put up a monument for him. He went to Rawlings Elementary. and Summerville High School. And I just think it's the right thing to do. Right now, there's a time element on ordering this memorial, because they'll make the run in April. So I thought it only appropriate that the town pay the down payment on that. We are going to put it somewhere, we might as well get it here. So Sculpture in the South will be doing a fundraising in the future to pay for other costs associated with it.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd just say the whole story's online if you want to look at it.
Yeah. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed likewise, the ayes carry. I'd like to hear that story, Bob. Okay, Lisa.
Mr. Mayor, the next three items are requisitions that all have to do with the Maple Street project, all regarding utility locations. And we've got the funding source to come from fund balance and reimbursed with TIF bond proceeds. And the reason we worded it that way is we will more than likely have issued the TIF bond before the first payments due. But just in case there is a little overlap because they are going to bill us monthly, we will just use our cash reserves until that bond is issued.
Can we deal with all three of these at the same time?
I'm fine with it. If Mayor, you good with it? Dealing with all three
Yeah,
at the same
yeah,
time?
okay.
Yeah.
Did you make a motion? We do all three at the same time? Okay,
Correct.
everybody's read these, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we got a motion. We do all three at the same time. Second,
Second.
got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by any discussion.
This is just on the motion to combine.
Sir?
Is this just on a motion to combine these three?
Yeah, all three, yeah,
So we'll have to have a subsequent motion to approve, correct?
right.
Okay. No discussion.
All in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed likewise. Ayes carry.
Next, Mayor, we'll need a motion to approve. Next, we'll need a motion to approve those three items.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to authorize the town administrator to enter into agreements with Dominion Energy, Dorchester County Water and Sewer, and Summerville CPW as laid out in financial requisitions 1, 2, and 3.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise, the ayes carry.
Next is executive session, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we go into executive session, discuss contractual matters related to Fire Station 6, contractual matters related to potential lease of town-owned property, former Century 21, contractual matters related to potential purchase and or lease of property from municipal court.
Second.
Okay, motion made that we go into executive session, and you all heard why. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting yes. Aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. Ayes carry.